It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we begin a Wednesday, Gary, how are you?
We should have spin the news wheel.
Woo-hoo.
Where do we start?
Exactly. Where to begin?
We need to have that sound effect. All right, let's. There's too many stories. Let's spin the news wheel.
Right. Put on a blindfold and just throw a dart. Okay, here we go.
Oh, you mean like the way they do the budget?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll let you know just very quickly yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Except for it's not darts, it's money. Yes?
Somebody on, it's exactly right.
Large amounts of money.
Somebody put the meme up yesterday on Facebook, somebody I know, that said, it was basically forwarded Occupy Democrats.
Right.
And it just said, the thing about Social Security and Medicare. Social Security and Medicare isn't an entitlement. You put, you put your money into it, you should get it back. And
that's the definition of entitlement.
Exactly. And it's just the dumbest thing. And so this person really isn't that political, and when they are, more populist liberal.
Right. Right.
And so I said, wow, interesting that Occupy Democrats don't realize that it's called entitlement because
you're actually entitled to it.
Yeah, because you're entitled to it.
It's different from entitlement mentality.
Right, exactly, and I put that there.
Right. Entitlement mentality means that you believe it's the mentality that people have, some people, not all, that they're entitled to something that they're not entitled to.
Yes.
But if you pay into it,
you're entitled.
Ben.
Oh. Explain.
Why is Eric Harley starting a fight with Ben Shapiro?
Explain.
I'm not going to explain. It's up to Ben Shapiro to explain.
Okay. Well, Shapiro last week got into the Social Security thing on social media, and it just went boom because the trolls got involved in it, and the personal attacks and everything else.
It unraveled pretty quickly,
right? And he was simply talking about the reality of it. So it's always a great discussion to have.
It's the debate we've been having for a long time.
But the thing about the debate is the debate on Social Security and Medicare for me has got nothing to do with my opinion.
No.
It has to do with the reality. With what?
It has to do with my money.
No, it has to do with the reality of economics. I mean, and it's like, well, Congress doesn't have the guts to tackle it. Well, duh, because there's only three things you can do with it. You either cut, raise taxes, or you raise taxes.
Yeah.
And so, no, why do you think nobody wishes to deal with it? That's not, I disagree with your opinion because that doesn't matter. And the whole point is it doesn't matter whether it's an entitlement program and whether you're morally entitled to it.
Right.
It's the fact that the money's not going to be there.
Right.
Oh, the other thing is, too, since we're on it very quickly, I've seen you here in a couple of memes over the last few weeks that and conservatives stating this, that, well, the problem with Social Security is they stole the money. Congress didn't steal the money.
No.
The money was borrowed. And now here's the part. If you want to make the argument for stealing, though, the money that in the past has been in the actual fund was actually getting interest. They put it in special securities to get interest. And so when they took it out for other programs, when the government takes it out, the government has to pay interest on that. But the government is you.
Yeah, right.
Well, the government isn't you when it comes to spending, but the government is you when it comes to paying it.
Oh no, it's your
paying it
great
back.
grandkids when it comes to spending.
Right. And so there's this whole thought that we've seen and we've knocked it before, which says, well, if they just paid back what they stole from it, well, they're doing that right now. The IOUs have to be paid back by law. And so they're, and again, they have to pay interest on what they borrow, but the interest is paid for by you, so it just makes it more expensive and drains more possible funds from Social Security. So when it whether it's 2020 or 2033 or 2034, when they're supposed to be what's the average, like a 20% cut if nothing is done, that's based on the fact that the IOUs have been paid off.
Right. That's when I hit my full retirement. 2033.
You tell me I'm going to have to continue doing the show till after that?
No, I'm just telling you I am. You'll be fine.
But when I was talking to the person I know on Facebook, they responded and said, well, the people that cut Social Security, that's what they say.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow. And I said, wow. That's interesting because I've been researching Social Security and Medicare for 35 years, which is how long I've been doing this. Mm-hmm. For 35 years, I've been researching it.
Since Ben was 5, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've talked to politicians on for years on both sides of the issue. I mean, I've never met anyone who is questioning the viability of Social Security and Medicare. Mm-hmm. And believes there are great challenges ahead that have ever given that opinion, ever, because it would be stupid. If Trump came out and said, for example, if Trump came out tomorrow and said, you're not entitled to Social Security, he probably loses a significant portion of the support that he has right now.
I'm guessing the upper demos, yes.
The upper demos he's going to lose, and anybody probably might be in their 50s. Mm-hmm. They're going to go, what? Trump has never said that. Mm-hmm. I don't know a Republican who's ever said that.
Right.
I don't know of a Democrat who's ever said that. What it's a straw man issue that it was created by the Democrats.
Yeah.
Because that's where you see it all the time.
Right.
You see Democrats posting it all the time. That's what it really is. But I was just having a little bit of fun. And I broke my rule, don't get involved in it, but I'm not really going to get too involved. I'm not going to really get into the discussion on it. Because I really don't. I don't have time.
If I want to get involved but don't want to get involved, I always start it with, I heard on the radio that, and then just blast them. But that wasn't me saying that. That was somebody else, so you'll have to respond to them, not me.
I did tell you, I think, that I saw on the National Review blog, somebody put, I was listening to a podcast this week.
Yeah.
Or from last week.
Right.
And they were talking about the fact of basically what's worse, corporate greed or government greed?
Thanks for listening.
And I was like, well, okay. Yeah. I don't even know why we picked that topic last week. It wasn't a current event issue.
Well,
I don't believe, was it a current event issue that got us to that? I don't think.
We somehow got to it, and we played the Milton Friedman cut from Donahue, and so.
But it was basically we were making the compare. There might have been somebody. It probably was the shrinkflation thing or something like that on corporate greed. But
I think that's how we got to it.
We took it and said, well, wait a minute. Let's look at corporate greed versus political greed.
Right.
And then we thought of the Milton Friedman audio cut from Phil Donahue and played it.
Right.
I just thought it was interesting that happened. But you ready to go?
Sure. Why not?
Let's spin the wheel and let's hit. Since we live in Texas, let's hit the Supreme Court. Not really a decision yesterday. They just lifted the stay. In
terms of granting relief.
Yeah. Right. They lifted the stay on SB 4.
Right.
And everybody seemed to be really surprised about it. It isn't a permanent decision at all. In fact, the thing that's really interesting is because it was 6-3, but nobody said anything. Nobody explained why they lifted the stay. It now goes back to the Fifth Circuit, who was looking at it. But Texas law enforcement can arrest illegals while this is happening. So let's first go to, because everybody seemed to be surprised about it, you and I brought, I'll give you a little tease, then we'll go to Jonathan Turley, then we'll come back and we'll explain. We had said if you look at the Constitution and you look at how at the beginning of this country, if you're an originalist, a constructionist of looking at the Constitution, the fact that the states are the ones that created the federal government. Mm-hmm. And the federal government had certain responsibilities. But as we know, and this has been brought up, that before the federal government really had a navy, it was the states that were taking care of pirates inside of, United States waters. Mm-hmm. The states were actually doing that.
Right.
But we said this is a very interesting question based on how this country was formed. And there's this erroneous opinion that is held that the federal government has jurisdiction of all over the states, and that comes from the federal government. And it doesn't. Any authority the federal government has came from the states in the Constitution originally. Mm-hmm. And we said we know that thought process, especially after Arizona, the Arizona Supreme Court ruling, has to go through, because this has taken it even to another step, which is what recourse does a state have if the federal government, in a premeditated and calculated way, doesn't enforce the law on purpose, where the only result is to damage a state and damage a state's border. And we thought, you're going to have some of these Supreme Court justices that has to be going through their mind. It has to be, because that is a totally and completely legitimate question.
Right.
Irrespective of who was in the office. If the federal government says we're not going to abide by the law, we have leeway here, and we're just not going to pay attention, and mass chaos is caused at the border, and therefore a state is harmed by it, and a number of states are harmed by it, and the federal government will not retract it. Do the states have any rights to protect their own border? And you and I looked at each other and we said, yeah, they do.
Of course.
Let's play Jonathan Turley yesterday as he talked about it on Fox News. Here we go.
Well, I have no doubt that they're surprised. This is like winning the impossible hand and literally Texas Hold'em. I mean, they are really working against the grain of past Supreme Court cases, going back to the Arizona case. The Supreme Court has consistently ruled in favor of the federal government's occupation of this field, that they preempted state laws that interfere with the federal policies with regard to immigration and border security. So this is a considerable surprise. But the Fifth Circuit decision was also a surprise. It indicates that these judges and these justices believe that there are serious questions here and possible room for states to be operating in this area. Now, we shouldn't read too much into it, but usually when you deal with injunctions, the justices will look at the likelihood of prevailing on the merits and whether there are legitimate arguments here being raised to support that injunction. They clearly found that this is a question where Texas should be allowed to continue to operate under this law while it's being considered by the Fifth Circuit.
We'll talk more about that, because the question nobody's looking at is not whether Texas has a right, if the federal government is actually enforcing the law, to come up and enforce their own law. Texas is simply saying, if they're not going to enforce what the current federal law is, they're not enforcing it, and it's causing harm to our state. And even the governor talked about it, we mirrored this after the fact that we will follow exactly what the federal law is.
Right.
That The states have a right to protect themselves when the federal government will not abide by the law. That's the question.
Right.
866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. It's not always easy to spring back from the harsh days of winter to warmer months ahead. From de-icing chemicals to hidden debris underneath snow and ice, winter conditions can do serious damage to your truck. Here's a must-do maintenance check to help you minimize downtime and stay rolling. Inspect your brake hoses, linings, and slack adjusters for any wear and tear. Listen for any air leaks that may have resulted from moisture freezing up in the system. Check slack adjusters for proper stroke and lubrication. And check your brake linings or pads to ensure proper thickness.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
In Red Eye Radio, he's Eric Harley and I'm Gary McNamara. And then, as you pointed out in our pre-show meeting, we didn't get to this yet. The continuing of the story after the Supreme Court lifted the stay. You had a federal appeals court late last night stop the state law allowing the Texas police to arrest people suspected of illegally crossing the Texas-Mexico border hours after the Supreme Court had allowed it to go into effect. I don't know how they do that.
Yeah, I don't get that at all.
I don't get it either. So I just love this here because this is a Texas Tribune. Steve Vladek, a University of Texas at Austin law professor, said the back and forth is indefensibly chaotic.
Well,
I don't care. I just want to get to the right.
Who has the authority here is the question. The back and forth in the courts it may be chaos, but how does that apply to the legal?
Right, exactly. That's
part of all this. That's the only thing that matters.
And that's why, like I said, from the very beginning, when we asked that question, we said, can anybody debate that? Because I understand that the federal government has jurisdiction and states just can't say we're going to ignore this particular federal law, but that's not what's happening.
No.
The state of Texas is not saying we're not going to abide by the federal government.
Right.
They're saying we're going to abide by the congressional law.
Right.
Because the administration is not doing it.
Right. The law is in place to protect all the states and all the states' citizens, including ours.
Because I would say if the state of Texas was saying we don't like the law and we're not going to follow it, well, that's a slam dunk for the feds.
Right.
But that's not what's happening here. And we always ask that question when you look at a state that is in at a federal government, not a federal government, at an executive branch that is not following the law from Congress, and because of that is damaging states, do states have a recourse to protect themselves from the actions of the executive branch who is not following the law of the elected representatives of the people? That would be, I think I've covered most of it there.
Right, yeah.
That would be the legal argument that you would make on that.
Right.
And when you understand that this country was formed by the states creating the federal government, and the power of the federal government through the Constitution actually came through the states. And we know that in our history, we gave, the example's been given about states when the federal government didn't have, the naval power to do so. We're going after pirates themselves. When you look at all of that, is there a question to be asked? And we have said back then, absolutely there is.
Right.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, I still don't understand about the entire state process, and even if it's a separate panel on the and I haven't seen any analysis on it because that story just broke here in the last hour. I don't know how a separate panel of the Fifth can override a rejection of a stay from the Supreme Court. I just don't understand.
The Supreme Court was answering an appeal by the Biden administration for relief here to basically stop the state of Texas. And at first, the Supreme Court said, "Well, let's hit the brakes here until we can learn more about it." And then they issued yesterday's decision on that. Again, not a decision on the case.
Well, actually, what they said was, Texas can enforce the law. We kick it back to the Fifth Circuit to actually come up with a decision on it.
Right. And they do have a hearing. It is, all that
right,
is
hearing today.
is going on. Yeah, right. And there's actually I think it's going to continue over the next couple of weeks. It's on the docket. Yeah. But and then a totally separate. So the decision by the first panel at the Fifth Circuit is the one that allowed Texas to enforce the law. Biden administration goes to the Supreme Court, says, "Hey, give us some relief and stop Texas, would you?" And the Supreme Court says, "Well, hold off. Well, let us take a moment." And then yesterday, they rejected that request by the Biden administration. Then a separate panel which basically then allowed Texas, because of the first panel decision at the Fifth Circuit, Texas was allowed to continue enforcing the law. Now, this is a separate decision by a separate panel, 3-judge panel at the Fifth Circuit that says, no, we're putting it on hold now.
Yeah, but I don't see how they can do that. Because, again, if the Supreme Court kicks it back and says, look, you need to come up with a decision on it, and then they come up with a decision on it that says Texas can't do it, and if it's the full Fifth Circuit actually making the decision, the case, then they could sit there, and then at that point, because the Supreme Court kicked it back to them to make that decision, I understand it. Did the Supreme Court say, look, no, there's not going to be a stay, and if another separate panel of the Fifth Circuit wishes to put the stay back in, then it overrides what we do? I don't see that. The
only way that the decision by the second panel, which was, by the way, after the Supreme Court decision, the only way that would be effective is if the Supreme Court was saying, no, we'll leave whatever the Fifth Circuit did in place, and we'll leave it to them. We're not going to give relief to the administration as requested. And if that's the case, and that gives authority back to the Fifth Circuit, and then a separate panel does something different, then they wait for it again. And this time it would be, if there's going to be any temporary relief request, that it would be the state of Texas asking that.
It still doesn't make sense.
Of the Supreme Court.
I don't know when a separate panel no matter what the situation, how a separate panel could override a Supreme Court decision to lift a stay.
If it is, if it is overriding it, that's my point, is if what they're saying is, if the Supreme Court is saying, well, we'll leave it to whatever the Fifth Circuit did or does, we'll let that be the case for now until we get the case. But we didn't hear anything. They didn't write a decision. So I don't know. I guess we'll find out in the morning.
Happens. Yeah, it's just, but I think that that's the question, and you don't hear that debate at all.
Mm-hmm.
You heard Turley get into the fact, well, they have serious questions. Yeah, but get to the heart of the matter.
Right.
And by the way, I like Turley. And I just don't. Again, he was commenting on it right afterwards, but it's the point that we always brought up. Well, the state government, federal government has control of this. If federal government law, dictates on certain, things, and the border is one of them. Well, I agree with that. That's what the law states, correct?
Right.
And the federal government does have the responsibility to enforce the law. What if the federal government decides not to force the law and it causes continuous harm, not just for a day, not for a week, not for a year? What has it been on the Texas border? How long? The Texas-Arizona border. How long has it been, just insanity? And so they look at it and they go, all right, and that's a question to be asked. If the executive branch decides, because that's the question, and I'll say it again because I think it's important to lay it out in a very simple way. If the executive branch, the president of the United States, says, I am not going to follow the law, the federal law that was passed by the elected representatives of the people to control the border, and I'm going to open it up and make it mass chaos where I harm a state. Does a state have any recourse when the executive branch ignores what the federal law is and harms a state? And if you explain it that way, I don't know if you're going to win legally. I believe you should be able to win legally because it's not that Texas is saying, oh, we're not going to abide by the federal law. Or we're not, let's put it this way, we're not going to cooperate with the federal government. We're going to be a sanctuary city.
Yeah. Right.
That's not what they're doing. It's not that we're not going to abide by federal law. And that's why they said we wrote the law basically saying we wish to enforce what the congressional law is. That's what we went. That's the only thing that we're enforcing is what mirrors what the federal government, what the congressional law already is that exists. And that's really the heart of the matter. It's not. And this is what you're going to hear. You've heard it already. The mainstream media. Texas believes that they can supersede federal law. It's not the case. It's not what they're arguing.
No. In fact, they believe that the federal law should be enforced.
Right.
It's not being enforced. In fact, you could argue that deliberately the federal government is going out of their way to make it even harder.
Right.
And go around the law. The federal government right now is going around federal law, is damaging the citizens of Texas by going around and circumventing the current law on the books and doing damage to the state of Texas. And they have no other recourse than to enforce the law, the federal law. So that's everything is based on what the law states.
And so legally, I don't know what will happen to it, but you're going in right now. I saw that Ohio yesterday in the Republican primary, of course, the number one issue was what? Immigration, the border. So that's not going away, and we know how it's risen. Well, you want to keep this? You want to keep this in the news? What Texas is saying is we want a closed border. We don't want to deal with this.
Right.
We shouldn't be dealing with this. The federal government, excuse me, I want to make sure, got to make sure I don't say the federal government. The executive branch must follow congressional law. And they're not doing it.
Yep.
And so if they don't do it, we're going to do it. Stating that, and this is why they've got to make it clear, and Texas has to market the daylights out of exactly, what they're doing, because if they do it and they do it correctly, the American people will look at it and say, oh, my God, yeah, that is a great question. Because it is a great question. Because it's not about this state won't follow federal law. It's that the executive branch won't follow federal law. And it's harming the state of Texas. By the way, it's harming other states too. But this is the case is about Texas. It is harming the state of Texas. And as you said, premeditated and calculated.
Yeah.
They know it's harming it. It's not like, okay, we did this one thing.
Yeah,
we did
deliberate.
For example, where you sat there and, it's not the same thing, but remember the luxury tax when the Democrats passed a luxury tax for yachts? This is going to be great. And all of a sudden they reversed it within 6 months because people were getting laid off from the American yacht industry because the taxes are going, oh, good, I'll just buy a foreign yacht. And then they quickly reversed it. This isn't, we passed a law and there were negative consequences to it. This is, the federal law was passed. It's been passed. It's been enshrined in our federal law for the longest time. And the Biden administration said, we're not going to abide by the federal law. And because this has gone on for such a long time, it's not like, oh, okay, you did something and now you reversed it and, you realize the error of your ways and now you're enforcing the law. And the federal government says, well, we're going to stay out of it. We're just going to stay out of it. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the Arizona law, it wasn't even close to what we see now. And by the way, Supreme Court, they can sit and look at it and go, yep, it isn't the same as when the Arizona law was in effect. How many more, what is it? What do you have? 5, 10, 15 times more people crossing the border. It's a complete nightmare. Yeah. It's bankrupting cities because of everything that's going on here. There is harm because of the executive branch will not follow congressional law. And that's how the state of Texas needs to market it to the people of the United States, because this is a huge political issue.
Right. Well, because
it goes away. It goes away if Trump wins.
Yeah, if you look at it this way, that the federal government has this administratively, they've come in and they've said that, all right, no, other people can come here from other countries, and we're not going to enforce the law that stops them from doing that. Even though the law exists, they can break the law by crossing the border, and states can do nothing about it. Think about that. That's basically the position.
Yes.
You get no say-so when people come here illegally, states. That's damaging. And there's no way around that. The states have the right to enforce the law themselves. The states have no other choice. And there's no way to argue that.
I'm reading here, the Supreme Court's confusing new border decision. There is no decision.
Yeah.
Supreme Court didn't make a decision on it.
No, it's not a decision.
They simply said Texas can enforce the law.
Right. Well, and in fact, reading some of what Amy Howe at SCOTUS blog wrote on this, in a 5-page opinion, Justice Barrett stressed that the Court of Appeals, quote, has not entered a stay pending appeal, end quote, but instead only a temporary administrative stay. Therefore, she noted that the Court of Appeals has not yet weighed in on whether Texas is entitled to a stay.
All right, there you got there. There
There's
it is right
the
there.
answer
there it is.
for,
okay, thank you.
for
thank
the
you.
decision for
Thank you.
the other 3-judge panel at the Fifth Circuit.
That makes sense then.
And that's kind of what I was thinking. I thought, well, that's the only thing. And she said, in fact, therefore, she noted that the Court of Appeals has not yet weighed in on whether Texas is entitled to a stay pending appeal, which, quote, puts this case in a very unusual procedural posture. That's kind of where you and I were. It was like, okay, hold on a second. And the word chaos, by the way, is I've seen now in, I don't know, several articles.
Well, we don't think they should use that word. We believe the word that should be used is bloodbath.
They didn't pick up on the word of the week, on the word of the year. So now that explains it. It's like, okay, we didn't, we're, as Justice Barrett looks at it and says, yeah, we're in an odd procedural, situation here. And then so the second panel, that other panel, separate panel at the Fifth Circuit then came in and said, okay, here's that decision.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
So now it's on hold again.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, we got it again. The generals, some of the former generals, testifying before Congress yesterday, and again stating that when Biden said that he followed, what the generals told him to do, they all said, they all made it clear what they told the president to do.
Yeah.
And again, it was another, I guess, moment of where you saw the seriousness of the president lying to the American public about what the generals told him to do in Afghanistan.
Yep.
We'll have some of that audio coming up.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. So I was thinking yesterday.
Uh-oh.
And it's, YouTube was on, and it was just going into shuffle.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this before, how I love watching the videos of the people that we're living van life. And I say we're living van life because there's a lot less of them now after they did it for a couple of years.
Yeah, after COVID was over, it's like,
Right.
I kind of like living inside.
And it's like, well, it's not as free as you think it is because you have a lot of mechanical problems, and therefore it's like, well, that's what you get when you get a any piece of machinery, anything that has I don't know, 1 million moving parts.
I like the stealth van camping.
Oh,
where there's one guy that took an industrial-looking truck and turned it into, on the inside, it is unbelievable. And it's got all this technology, and he works from home, home on wheels, and then he parks his van. It looks like it's a box truck. It looks
I've watched it because
so
I love the box truck.
So he just finds a place where it looks like a box truck would park all night.
Was that the guy that has it looks like a vent, but it's a window?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's got a deck on the back.
Yes.
Instead of a roll-up door, it comes down and it turns into a deck.
But it looks like a roll-up door.
It looks like from the outside. You couldn't tell. You can't tell. And so between the cab and the back, he's got, basically also a sliding partition. And it just looks like the back of the cab. It doesn't look like you could go from the cab to the back of the vehicle. But I love watching. It's to me, that's just awesome that you could take that and have that idea. Now, I don't know who he's hiding from because it's not like people are out to get RVers, hey, but it is an interesting.
Yeah, they will on city streets, though. A lot of.
You don't want to. Yeah, you don't want to get, but there are plenty of places you can park legally and stay the night. And so, but, so the stealth part of it is it's just intriguing in an entertaining way, but totally unnecessary.
Well, before I get to what my point was going to be, see, I've got the Al Bundy fascination with toilets, but in the RVs and constantly going, okay, well, I don't like the black tank thing. I just wouldn't like. Now, odds are I'm never going to own a van RV, But I'm fascinated by people who do, and I'm fascinated about all the technology that they put into something that is so small.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look and I go, but they still don't have the toilet thing done yet. It's like, nah, black tank, nah, I don't want to deal with it.
Right.
Composting toilet, I don't think so.
To me, composting toilet is a lot worse than having it, because the black tank thing to me is not that big of a deal.
Yeah, see, for me,
The composting toilet thing, you're just making it too hard. You're just making it way too hard. If you understand physics and how water moves.
Right. And with the urine separator, right? There's a composting of which one has a urine separator?
Yeah, I don't know. I lost interest.
And I'm like, well, that's just too much. No, I don't want to have to make all these decisions. What you got to aim over there? Oh, what? No, this is too complicated.
Well, I don't like the part of the video where it says it didn't go as planned.
So I don't like the black tank. I don't like the composting toilets.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you get to the incinerating toilets, and it uses way too much energy, especially if you're going to use the electric one for the batteries, and it's like $6,000-7,000 for that. But it's still quite neat because you do your business and it just burns everything to whatever. And I'm like, okay, that would be cool. You just empty the the tray at the end. Then they got the dry toilet, which is basically, you go in it wraps it all up, and then but that's more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just fascinated with the whole toilet thing, and it comes from Al Bundy a long time ago when he got what was the name of his toilet? The Ferguson.
Mm.
Yes, when Al Bundy got the Ferguson, and it was like the biggest day of his entire life when he was building a bathroom that was separate from the family's bathroom, and he got the Ferguson, and he was crying because his father brought him when he was a young boy to the Ferguson plant. And and Al said, I had to go, and I said, no, you got to wait till you get to the plant. And he goes, my father was right. It was worth the wait. But getting to the original point, even though sometimes when we take a side road, we do have some fun with it.
We do.
But as I was watching it, and this is because of the whole, the Trump lawsuit and the $464 billion fine for alleged, quote, fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And it was somebody, at an RV show saying, and this RV, the MSRP, $152,000, but for this show only $99,000.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, that's over a third of a cut. And I'm like, I wonder if RVs are coming down. But that wasn't the point.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to go after Trump, then isn't the concept of all dealerships in New York having an MSRP that means nothing? You're setting a base price that isn't built on reality at all. Can't Letitia James, can't she make that fraud?
Well,
if she can make what Trump did fraud, could she demand that MSRP go away in New York State?
She can make both sides of any negotiation fraud.
Exactly. If she can make both sides of a negotiation,
either side is trying to gain favor in any negotiation. It's the art of the deal. See what I did there? So that's the entire thing is, okay, but you go in and you want to buy the vehicle or whatever it is, and I'm only willing to pay this. I believe it's only worth this. Well, based on her own standards, then that's fraud. Or the dealership, nah, we believe this, we believe that. Now, the bigger catch would be the dealership, but it doesn't mean she would stop there. I mean, that would be the get for her. These big, bad corporate dealerships, we need to go after them because they're ripping people off.
Well, she was going after, who was she going after? What was the company for the climate pledge that they said, well, we're going to attempt to go, we're going to attempt to reduce our global warming gases by 12%.
Right.
And they didn't do that, so she's accusing them of fraud.
Right.
And it's like, but there is no law.
Yeah, it's only a pledge. It's a pledge to themselves. There is no law that they're breaking.
Oh, by the way, I was watching a hockey game, or I did see the highlights of a hockey game the other day. Seattle and Climate Pledge Arena Please stop it. For God's sakes.
That's fraud.
That's
Yeah.
Good God.
You know,
But
an arena that on certain days has to artificially create ice. I'm sorry. What is your pledge? And then you have to.
and it's an entertainment center
Yeah.
where you're using electricity.
Right.
And you have to heat just for entertainment purposes only.
Right.
How dare you, Seattle?
Right.
Defund the Climate Pledge Arena.
Climate Pledge Arena. Man, that's a contradiction. If there is one, it's seriously. No, your pledge then should include no more games, no more arena.
But it was funny when I saw that yesterday. I said, wow, MSRP, New
Yeah.
York,
Yeah.
Attorney General James. Well, all MSRP, it's the manufacturer's suggested retail price that is never close to the actual value of what you sell it
Well,
for. That's fraud.
If I make things, I'm going to suggest that each of my widgets is valued at $1 billion. That's my manufacturing suggested retail. $1 billion. Now, let's negotiate. Man, because that would be the thing. We all know what MSRP means when it comes to vehicles.
Right.
It means two things: diddly
And squat.
and squat.
Right.
So but that's the thing. You come in, which is your original point. You come in and you're Letitia James. Well, who's making these suggestions?
Because you could make the point. I've never seen an MSRP that has undervalued a vehicle.
Right. It's only, we think it's only worth $10,000, but our asking is 30.
Our MSRP is $10,000.
We suggest 10, but it's,
but it's 30.
it doesn't work in the opposite direction at all. But the price, and by the way, that's a no haggle price. There's no such thing as no haggle price because I'm walking away. Come back.
Was it Saturn?
Hold on, we're haggling.
Was it Saturn that did that?
Yeah, and there was so many dealerships along the way. We've got no haggle pricing. No, you don't.
Because I'm going to haggle.
Yeah.
It's like, here's what we want
me
for
walking away. That's
Bye.
me haggling. See my back. See, when you see my back, that's the beginning of the haggling. I come from a long line of hagglers. We're good at haggling. We haggle just for the fun of it.
Didn't Obama haggle? No, it was another word.
He grappled.
He grappled. Right?
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I'm sorry. I got haggled and grappled.
You could.
I'm grappling with the MSRP
It would be called
price.
graggling. You could do both. I'm haggling while I'm grappling. It's graggling. Yeah. No haggle pricing. Okay. Keep saying that out loud. Yeah. Let me go ask my boss about that.
All right. Gary and Eric, could you describe what you've talked about the last 15 minutes? No.
Not really. But you can listen to the podcast when it gets up later.
Right. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Smart owner-operators make every single week as profitable as possible. One trip is not enough time to be considered profitable or unprofitable, and an entire month may be too much time to manage. 1 week is the right amount of time to deal with efficiently. To do so, look at the advantages and disadvantages of every day of the week. Match trip length to the optimum day of the week. Plan to deliver on the day you have the best opportunity of getting a load. Your personal weekly plan will vary depending on the weekly delivery flow cycle of your region, typical length of haul, personal requirements, and other factors. What's important is to have a specific weekly plan that helps you be successful. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website For more details on this and many other topics, brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Just looking here at some of the exit polling from the primaries yesterday. 70% of Ohio Republican primary voters say it's important that Ohio's next senator supports Donald Trump. No blank, Sherlock. At this point, yeah, of course.
Right.
Number one, because there is a possibility which did not exist in 2020, for example, that Trump could outperform a lot of members running for Congress.
Right.
That didn't happen in 2020.
Right.
And when that happens, yeah, you want, for example, the Senate seat, and you want the candidate that Trump endorses and endorses Trump.
Yes.
That's basic politics.
Right.
Right. And the other thing is that for the Republican voter out there, immigration was the number one issue. And that's the thing, we had talked earlier about the Supreme Court and lifting the stay, the temporary stay, by the way. And, both, you and I believe that it's not just the legal fight here, but it's the political fight. And political fight of keeping this in the news.
Right.
Is not an advantage to the Biden administration at all.
No, it isn't. When we see the things that are on display over and over again, the two-tier justice system when it comes to Donald Trump, the radical agenda, the border, all of these things that keep there. I mean, it's every day they dominate. These items are not going away, and that's bad for the left. It used to be during a political season, because so many things were in the abstract, you could kind of let them go away. You could set them aside and deal with them later while you were grappling. And then you could, because remember, that's really where it came down to, on gay marriage. Obama going in, he was saying, I believe a marriage is between a man and a woman, and then became president, and he's grappling. Well, we know what he always believed. But politically, in 2008, you couldn't get away with that as a Democrat. And then, of course, as things started to evolve, and then he could grapple. But you could set those things aside during the election season because so many of them were in the abstract and they weren't on the table. They weren't in the face and at the feet and right in front of every single American every day. Inflation, the border, all of the radical agenda that's happening over and over again. You can't get away from it, much less put it aside for the political season and say, we'll have this discussion. We will, as a nation, we'll all decide together. No, the decisions have already been made, and the effects of those decisions are pummeling American families every single day. And
because you look at right today, the three biggest issues, these are the things you hear the most about. Number one, inflation. As we all know, number two, the border. And number three, it's still, and I put Israel in there, and Israel would not be the number one issue except for the fact that a significant portion of the American public, still a minority, and still the majority of the Democratic Party are pro-terrorism.
Right.
That's something that's, so incredibly unique as a position to take. And I say unique just in a way to, because it's infuriating that it's happening, but it's just unique in a political election where it's so crystal clear that, and you take, the Afghanistan news and we'll have some of the discussion or some of the back and forth that went on in Congress yesterday, with Afghanistan and basically Biden lying about what the generals told him. Mm-hmm. And they went into more details.
Right.
Milley went into details, says, nope, we wanted this because if we got, this, and this. And they did say that every single condition, remember the withdrawal was condition-based?
Right.
Every single condition was broken by the Taliban.
Right.
And they still were trying to say, well, we've got the deal here, but they weren't following it.
Right.
Except for directly attacking American soldiers, but that happened as in the withdrawal.
Right.
As we know, but we'll get more into it coming up here.
More listeners not now than now, depending on when now is. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. A couple of things, economically speaking. Gas prices set to soar as temperatures heat up. There's a headline, Fox Business from AAA. This is where it's from.
Yeah.
Gas prices rose again this week and aren't likely to drop as temperatures heat up and manufacturers switch to more expensive summer blend fuel, according to the latest AAA report. The national average cost for a gallon of gasoline increased to $3.41, a slight 2-cent increase in the previous week, but oil costs keep rising, crossing the $80 a barrel mark while demand keeps growing. These factors alone push up what drivers pay at the pump. The traditional switch to a more expensive summer fuel blend tends to increase prices by 10 to 15 cents, which means drivers are looking at a receipt for expensive gas prices this summer. According to the AAA, this is the time of the year we normally see pump prices start to rise, said the AAA spokesperson. And while prices have been rather pokey so far, they should begin to accelerate and move higher very soon. If you're trying to lower your overall auto cost, you could consider not driving.
Yeah, there's that. It's what I like to call walking.
These states saw the biggest change in gas prices. Texas, 10 cents. You know what the funny thing is? The gas station that I normally go to, I was shocked. When we going by there the other day, they normally have the cheapest price was $3.39. I went, whoa. I go up to I-20, it's $3.09. I'm like, oh, I got ripped off. And it's always the opposite.
Right.
I mean, well, it isn't always. Otherwise, I wouldn't have experienced that. You understand what I mean?
Usually closer to the interstate, it's higher.
Yes.
And then you get in, away from the interstate, it's lower. I've been enjoying some perks from a new app that I got, like some mega perks. But so I'm waiting until my truck is empty. But I only drive 2.2 miles. I've been making some trips out of town, so that it's helped there. But I'm getting the first 3 fill-ups through this app, give me $1 off per gallon. So I'm trying to really capitalize on it and make sure that I'm bone dry empty when I use that perk. And but even still, I think I paid on that first fill-up. It was $2.20. So it would have been $3.20 without the perk.
So Texas 10 cents, Alaska 10 cents, Oregon 9 cents, D.C. 9 cents, Utah 8, New Mexico 8, New Mexico 8, Washington State 8 cents, Montana 7, Arizona 6, Idaho 5. That's this week. Where gas prices went up the most. Most expensive markets for gas in the country. We all know it takes number one. California, $4.87 a gallon. That
actually sounds cheap for California. It's not cheap by Texas standards, but it sounds cheap for them.
Friend of mine moved to Florida from California, and she's been in California for years.
Yeah.
Got a house now. Could hardly afford an apartment without a roommate.
Right.
In L.A.
Oh, yeah. No,
and talking to her the other day, she goes, "It's like another world. It's like this huge, this huge load is lifted off you, saying I can afford to live here
with 9 other people in the house." Yeah, it's
no. Well, but the entire point is, how expensive. I was just looking at you saying, "Oh man, my house went up again." I mean, the real estate is expensive in Florida.
Yeah,
but still, if you compare it to L.A., it's like,
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. You were saying she can afford to live in Florida.
In Florida.
Okay.
Yes, in Florida.
Yeah, I was thinking we were still talking about Los Angeles. Well, no, by comparison, it's incredible. But I did see an article where the prices are going up in Texas and Florida. And people that are now moving from New York and California to Texas and Florida aren't saving as much money as they thought they would. Yeah, but when you do the comparison from California to Texas, you're still saving a ton of money because prices are going up. If you're moving into the metro areas, it's getting very expensive. So if you moved here 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was a much larger gap, but it's still a huge gap in the cost of living overall.
And when you get out of the metro areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
And by the way, there is a lot of Texas outside of the metro areas.
It's amazing to me to see how much even in our area hasn't been developed yet. I mean, give it a minute, it will be. It's funny because there are actually a couple of areas that I had not gone by in, I don't know, several months, maybe a year. And I passed by them completely developed with hotels, apartments. In one case, there was a hospital. And I thought, what? And a couple of those items could have been there before, but when it all starts to fill in, it becomes more noticeable. And that's exactly what was happening in this area. And I thought, my gosh, it's just when I moved here 30 years ago, between where we sit and DFW Airport, it was nothing but field. When we moved into this building, when our studios moved to this building, there was only the apartment complex. There was one behind us, and then it's the same company. Their second one they were building, but remember how they couldn't get it done, during the COVID. There were a couple of things. Pre-COVID, it was hard to get it done, and then it just it finally got, finished. But then all the homes that they built back here and condos and everything between here and basically DFW Airport just filled in.
When I first came to the studio from compared to this, the massive ABC studios that we used to broadcast from before we came here, couldn't even find the place. It was just like, this was all really, and it looks like, an industrial warehouse section.
Yeah, which it was.
And yeah, exactly. And so now it's becoming more residential, and our building's sitting you still can't find us. But
well, it's interesting because not but a few blocks from here, there's this little shopping center. It's a little, and it had a pretty big parking lot. At one time, there was a Chase Bank with a drive-through in that parking lot. They closed that down and moved over to the edge of the parking lot. And then there's this big area of now, it became just more parking lot. My oldest daughter says, "What's happening there at that strip center? What's happening in the parking lot?" I said, "They're building homes. Those are houses they're putting in the parking lot." Instead of, it used to be, well, they're, tearing everything down and turning it into parking lots. Not in our neighborhood. They're turning parking lots into homes.
Well, I'll tell you, people will almost buy anything here. You and I have joked about it. The townhouses across the street from us.
And they're all over this neighborhood.
But they are the ugliest looking things you could ever see, you could ever imagine in your life.
And they go like hotcakes.
I mean, it's like, what is that they're built? Are they? Is that like a big bird cage, or there's going to be birds or squirrels in there or something?
Half a million each.
I know.
and that's what they're doing. And it's interesting because if you went out, we're in this parking lot where they built them. If you go out in your front drive, there's that. It's the one side of the shopping center, which is an older shopping center. There used to be on one end of it used to be a Salvation Army store. There's a really great barbecue place that's still there in the middle of it, but it's not like you have this great view. It doesn't matter. People don't care. I mean, it doesn't. Yeah. It really does. It's about location. What's my proximity to whatever it is, downtown or shopping or this freeway, that freeway. As long as I don't have to make the trip, 30, 45 minutes each way, I don't care.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens because as we brought you the other day that North Texas, or the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the metro area, fastest growing place in the United States, 150,000 people alone. That would have been in 2022.
Right.
2023 hasn't come out. 150,000. You're talking about close to every 3 years, another 500,000 people just here.
Yeah.
And interesting, though, for example, city of Dallas County lost people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So while everything's growing around it in urban areas, even in Texas,
right,
they're losing population. People want, and this is, and you can't discount this enough. Because the whole thing of the urban planners was to get people to move into cities and people to have, people to rely on public transit.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole liberal urban planning that's been going on for the last 50 years.
Make it convenient, live, work, shop, and all in one area. And in a very small area.
And when you see what's happening here, even the domestic immigration into Texas, people don't want to live in cities.
Right.
They want a house in the suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, you live in this area, and probably other big metro areas have it. I mean, but it's newer here.
Yeah.
You can go to.
Well, and this is a suburb of Dallas. Yeah.
Right. You can go to Chicago, and you can find suburb after suburb, but the homes are older. Well, you go north or you go south, especially you go north, and everything's been built in the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's suburb after suburb after subdivision. You go to. I've gotten lost in the subdivisions.
Well, this is happening in this neighborhood. It's something they deemed the Renaissance Project, and it started, 20 years ago, and they would tear down an old, smaller house, and they gave a tax incentive. For the first 7 years, you'd build a $750,000 house where this $60,000 house was. And I thought, well, yeah, but you're buying a $750,000 house next to an older home that's tiny, right? People didn't care. And now entire neighborhoods have been completely replaced by these massive homes, and they're all new.
But what people are looking for is not to live the urban lifestyle, as we're finding out here. Mm-hmm. They want the suburban lifestyle, which means, number one, it's, you want your own home, which means you're going to need a car.
Right. Yep.
And you don't want an EV.
Right.
Because many people, when they buy that house, it's like, okay, we got to be very careful. I'm not going to overpay for a vehicle, and certainly not going to pay what they want for an EV.
Right.
So everything is going in where people are immigrating to domestically in the United States. It's not to move inside the cities.
Right.
Which is exactly the opposite of where the left wishes our society to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, not abstract, the reality.
Yep.
But gas prices, California $4.87, Hawaii $4.71, Washington State $4.24, Nevada $4.14. All the states over $4 a gallon. 866-98 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks for being here. Coming up following the top of the hour, former General Milley in front of Congress yesterday being asked questions about Afghanistan. And again, makes the point that what they advised Biden to do in Afghanistan was not what he did. And therefore, as we all know, that's the evidence that Biden lied to the American public, because he said nobody disagreed with his analysis no general disagreed with his analysis. Mm-hmm. Nobody in the top ranks of the military disagreed with him. They all disagreed with him on it. And that's just one of the many reasons why he cannot be president of the United States. A president cannot lie to the American public about a war.
Right.
And he cannot lie to them about what the generals told him to do, which then created, as we now know, a terrorist haven in Afghanistan.
Right. Yeah, it's been demonstrated a number of times now since the botched exit of Afghanistan that it has become a terrorism superstate, and it will continue to grow in that way.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the universe. The galaxy.
Yep.
Oh, wait a minute. I should have said the galaxy, then the universe. Universe is bigger than a galaxy.
Is it?
All right,
Is it really?
Let me go back to a song from a Christmas movie a long time ago.
Okay.
What can you do with the general when he stops being a general? Oh, what can you do with the general who retires? So when I mentioned General Milley before, I said former. He's retired.
Retired, yes.
Retired. So.
Yes.
And that's Bing Crosby from White Christmas, if you remember that song.
Yeah.
So just want to make sure I corrected that.
Unless he's demoted, is knocked down in rank, then you could say former. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the Colonel Sanders.
He's not really a colonel.
People don't know this. He's actually a captain. No offense to captains out there. Captain Crunch, actually a lieutenant. But it didn't, Lieutenant Crunch didn't sound good enough for kids.
Lieutenant Crunch.
Lieutenant Crunch. Ice cream, Lieutenant Crunch. I got you some ice cream, Lieutenant Crunch. Lieutenant Crunch. That's what we bought. We didn't have money for Captain Crunch growing up. We bought Lieutenant Crunch in the bag. And it wasn't even a good bag.
Somebody's got to do some kind of video. I saw it on a Seinfeld site. You know, the one where Elaine's dancing?
Yeah.
And George goes, with sweet, fancy Moses when she's doing that dance.
Yeah.
Somebody on one of the Seinfeld sites put Trump in the middle of it dancing. It is funny because Elaine's dancing with them. They're both dancing I was like, oh man, this is going to get blasted because it was on a Seinfeld site on social media.
Yeah.
And I thought someone was going to say, don't bring politics into it. They didn't. They were all. It was like, that's really funny.
It's funny.
Even people that said, I don't like Trump, but that's really good.
Yeah, right. That's funny
because it wasn't demeaning in any way. It was just, it was funny. It was just,
having fun.
Yeah, it was just, it was funny. So
yeah,
Banya for president. All right, looking here at the original point, you had retired General Milley before the House Foreign Affairs Committee yesterday, talking about Afghanistan and the killing of 13 servicemen and women at Abbey Gate, and being questioned again about the President of the United States, who lied to the American public about what the generals told him.
Yeah.
And Representative Mike Waltz gets into it a little bit. Over the next couple of days, we'll be playing more of this because some of the testimony it's bad. I mean, it's as bad as you can get, and the situation in Afghanistan was as bad as you can get. It still is the lowest numbers that the president has had post that happening. After it happened, that's when his numbers really, really sunk to the lowest level of his presidency because he lied to the American public,
right,
about what the general said, because the general's concerned, and even in part of it, Milley talked about. He goes, this is about a military thing. We know that military things all are supposed to, lead to civilian negotiations and things like that. But militarily speaking, because they were asked the question, would Afghanistan be okay today? And he goes, I can't tell you because I don't know. I can't read into what would have happened,
right.
But it would have been safe at that point.
Right.
Things would have been stabilized and and he said, because the forces that were left were elite forces. Again, he can't say what the situation would be now because of unforeseen circumstances. It's tough when you're a general and you're a military general and you deal with facts to talk to guess in a hearing before Congress what might have happened. But it was made clear that Biden lied.
Yeah.
I want to get to more of this. Representative Mike Waltz talking to Milley yesterday.
Mr. Chairman, the more I listen to this hearing, the more infuriated I get. And I know the Gold Star families sitting here have to feel the same way. I know every veteran watching today has to feel the same way because it's not about us. It's about them. And I think what upsets them most, General Milley, General McKenzie, are some of the statements from the president during this evacuation, including an interview that the president gave on national television during the withdrawal on August 18th, saying the generals never advised me to leave 2,500 and the only Bagram Air Base in the world sandwiched between China, Russia, Iran, and a platform to stay after counterterrorism. General Milley, is that an accurate statement that the generals never advised him to leave a stay-behind force to keep a lid on half the world's terrorist organizations?
I will tell you what my thoughts were at the time, my assessment.
Well, let me just say, you've testified today, you both testified repeatedly,
yes,
that you advised the National Command Authority we should leave a stay-behind force, including the base.
Plus NATO, plus
That's
contract.
right.
That's correct.
Did President Trump leave that stay-behind force despite his stated desire to get everybody out because the Taliban didn't meet the conditions?
When the administrations changed hands, there were 2,500 soldiers, and that was a
Did you
decision.
then, and you've stated today you didn't advise Biden to pull everybody out. You advised him to stay.
That's correct.
So that's an inaccurate statement. But let's go down the list here. Let's go back to July of 2021. President Biden, there's a likelihood, there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely. Does that comport with your knowledge at the time? In fact, you just a few weeks later said Kabul will be surrounded in 30 to 60 days.
My assessment at the time was if we went to zero in U.S. military forces, then there was a high likelihood of a collapse of the government of Afghanistan and the ANSF with the Taliban taking over.
Would collapse.
But I thought it was going to be, I personally thought it was going to be in the fall, somewhere around Thanksgiving. The assessments vary widely.
We're talking within months.
Within months of our withdrawal, that's correct.
The next one, there's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of an embassy in an embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. It's not at all comparable with Saigon. I think this picture proves that not to be the case. Fair enough. Joe Biden, July 8th, 2021. Next one, Americans should understand we're going to try to get it all done before August 31st. And if you're an American, if there's American citizens left, we're going to stay to get them all out. Was that your understanding of the operational planning at the time, to stay beyond August 31st, or were you planning to get out by August 31st?
We plan to get out by August 31st.
Last, but perhaps the most egregious. We believe about 100 to 200 Americans remain in Afghanistan with some intention to leave. You've both testified today, you just testified, General Milley, that it was impossible to know the number. In fact, is that accurate? It was very difficult to know the number.
Very difficult, and I don't think the numbers were accurate.
Yet the State Department's revised that number since to nearly 1,000 Americans left behind. Look, in July of 2021, Bagram is closing. We're withdrawing our four-star commander, General Milley. Ghani is visiting President Biden, practically begging us to at least leave our contractors and some little bit of air support. General McKenzie, you've testified that you were so concerned in July of 2021 that you put up recommendations, including lily pads to get our allies out, putting pieces in place to process our SIVs faster, putting measures in place to get our American citizens out, to get our allies out, and to take care of what American military should do, which is protecting all Americans. You were so concerned in July of 2021, you put those recommendations forward. That's what you've testified today.
That's correct.
And in fact, also, the diplomats on the ground, Mr. Chairman, sent a dissent cable. 23 diplomats saying if you continue down this road, disaster will ensue. Was that dissent cable shared with either of you? This is a formal channel going to the Secretary of State himself. Was that shared with you as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs? Was that shared with you as the commander?
I've never seen it.
I didn't see it at the time, and I haven't seen it since, and I would like to see that dissent.
I think the American people would like to see that. Chairman, here's my question for you. Do you know where the Secretary of State was on August 13th? The day before Kabul fell? Do you know where the Secretary of State was? Despite all of your concerns that State Department wasn't planning fast enough, we weren't getting our people out. According to the Washington Post, he was in the Hamptons. He was in the Hamptons on vacation.
And again, you lay out, I mean, lie after lie after lie from the President of the United States about what the military, what his lead generals were telling him. And he lied about what the generals were telling him.
Yep. And when it was clear that the Taliban was going to take over, and basically they did, the president had nothing to say. Remember, he had to be bothered to come back from vacation.
Oh, yeah?
And then he turned around and went back on vacation. And then they had to bother him again to do a sit-down with Stephanopoulos. Instead of going to the podium and telling the American people what had happened, think about that. When does that happen? When a president goes to a podium and announces something, it's a victory. When they hide, it's the opposite. This was not a victory, except for the Taliban. Don't know if they went to their own podium to make the announcement. They really didn't have to because the world watched it, including all of our allies, the now Gold Star families that are still today suffering through this, when this could have gone very differently if not for the lies.
And like I said, that's why, this is all part of the pattern of the pathological lying about anything.
Yeah.
Something that made the United States less secure, helped to form public opinion when he said, all the military told me, nobody in the military told me that we should stay. No one.
Right.
And that was a complete lie.
Right.
Why? Because the American public would say, okay, if the military's saying this, that's really important. But Biden couldn't defend the truth. And so he lied, and that got 13 American servicemen and women killed.
Yep.
Murdered.
Yep.
At least have the guts to say, I'm going against what the military says. When it comes to Americans in harm's way, as the commander-in-chief, you've got to have the guts to make the tough decisions and not lie about them. If you believe it's a tough and right decision, you make it and you tell the truth about it. The fact is, he knew that it would be a disaster if he told the American public the truth of what he believed. And that's why we find this president completely and totally reprehensible based on what you just heard there. And again, this isn't the first time that the generals have testified on this.
Right.
Could you imagine if this was Trump?
Oh, my gosh.
This was a story that's buried from yesterday.
Yeah, you didn't see any play on it.
You didn't see a lot of
in
play
the
at all.
mainstream media.
Nope. If you want to see where the media bias exists, just say Trump did that. Trump lied about what all the generals told him that got soldiers killed.
Right.
He would have, by the way, he would have been impeached for that by the Democrat, by their standard of what impeachment is.
Right.
866-98 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up fine the bottom of the hour. Did you see that Christine Blasey Ford was on The View yesterday? My God. And we'll have some of the audio of it where she was asked from Sarah Haynes, Sarah Haynes made the statement on The View. Even today, some people remain skeptical of your story. Oh, my gosh. And the whole point is she's coming out with her memoirs, and it's like all of a sudden the liberal media is on it. Let's go after Kavanaugh again. And it was Molly Hemingway just shut it down with, well, let's go back and remember what happened here. And so we'll get to that coming up here in a little bit because it just slams the door on everything. And when you look at it, when you look at the Carroll civil lawsuit against Trump there, which basically came down to he said, she said from decades ago,
right?
You look at that, and that's one of the problems with that particular case. And you saw Trump now is going to sue Stephanopoulos and ABC for using, for saying. And by the way, when you say somebody, I don't think he's going to win, but if that was an average person, they'd win because he said, you're a convicted rapist.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah, well,
a civil lawsuit for liability for sexual abuse, which is something totally different.
Yeah, totally different. And I wonder how, or if it. I mean, I don't think he's going to win either. But how do you not go after him legally just to make the point?
Yeah, because he's a public figure.
Right.
He's a public figure but the fact is that's where you get in trouble, even going after a public figure. When you claim that they have committed a specific crime that they have not, that's different than saying, of course, somebody's a liar or a cheater or whatever.
Right.
And so it'll be interesting to see where that all goes. Also, coming up, the House Oversight Committee holding a hearing examining Joe Biden's role in his family's influence peddling. The RNC coming out with a video from some of the witnesses from some of their depositions. We'll play that for you coming up here in just a little bit. Here was the official announcement. The House Committee on Oversight and Accountability will hold a hearing titled Influence Peddling, examining Joe Biden's abuse of public office. Now, that's the interesting thing. You don't see Hunter in there. It's never been about Hunter.
Right.
And so you look at this and go, okay, this is, it's the drip, 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 drip. I still don't think, unless we get information which is slam dunk for a bribe, that they will ever hold an impeachment vote on this.
No,
I don't believe that will happen before the election.
So.
I don't think there will be a trial.
No.
I think, in fact, what you might see is they keep going drip, 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 and by the time they get to September, they say, we have enough for an impeachment, but this is too close to an election. We'll let the people of the United States and the voters decide on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be and look, they're not going to get they wouldn't have the votes in the Senate for removal. And it wasn't the point to begin with, I don't believe, with the Republican Party in the House. It is to tell the story over and over again.
Every opportunity to tell the story over and over again.
The truth is not going to be, ignored when you can demonstrate it over and over and over again. People may decide, in spite of the truth, to still vote for Joe Biden. We know that's going to happen, but you can't ignore the facts. You can say, well, I'm still going to vote this way, but the facts are there in your face on this case. Over and over again. I think they've done a good job so far, and I think it's going to play out that way in the end.
Yeah, I don't think it's a major reason why people are going to vote, but it's a drip, drip, drip. It adds another thing out, and he's crooked.
Yep, exactly.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, apparently, we all remember the Justice Kavanaugh, Christine Blasey Ford hearings from a couple of years ago. Well, apparently she's put on her memoirs.
All right.
And so she's making the rounds of the liberal media. I want to play this audio cut here. She was on The View yesterday. And, I mean, are they trying to bring it back again?
I guess.
I mean, it's
I don't know to what end. I mean, but, it's the continued attack on any constructionist judge on, and the Supreme Court overall, I guess.
Here it is. The Joy Behar comment was the best one here. But here we go. By the way, this is almost, I don't even take them serious. The View is like for entertainment purposes only. And as I've said about The View many times before, The View perpetuates the false stereotypes, the false stereotype that women are emotional nightmares who are not critical thinkers, who have no knowledge of the facts, and that is amplified by the fact that they've got lawyers that are constantly watching and listening to what they say to make sure they don't get sued.
Yeah.
I mean, The View gives the worst stereotype impression of women, that they are emotional nightmares with no critical thinking skills whatsoever.
Right.
Now let's get to this little clip here of Christine Blasey Ford with Sarah Haynes and the rest of the gang.
Yes. Well, you've been called a highly credible witness, and you have a PhD in psychology. You're a professor. You teach at Palo Alto and Stanford universities. But even today, some people remain skeptical of your story. And you write that during the hearing, Senator Lindsey Graham wouldn't even make eye contact with you. Were you prepared for that kind of response?
I was prepared ahead of time that none of the Republicans were going to speak with me, and they were going to use an outside interviewer. And so I was actually surprised at how kind some of the other Republican senators were who broke that protocol and said hello.
Who was that? Can you name a good one?
That's
Can you name
a good one? And of course, it's Flake, and it's
Senator Flake and Senator Sass both came over and said
Neither
hello.
one's in Congress anymore, right? Yeah.
But still a credit there.
Yeah,
Yes, good for them.
Both good men. Yeah.
Now, so you would think, because of what she said, you were said to be a highly credible witness. Molly Hemingway laid it out yesterday. Highly credible witness? There is no evidence, zero, that Ford and Kavanaugh ever met. We got to rehash this stuff because they're coming back again with the same old.
Right.
It's like this is like, okay, racism and climate change isn't working this month. What do we go back to? What do we got here? What do we have? Let's bring back the Kavanaugh hearings.
Why not?
There is no evidence that Ford and Kavanaugh ever met. Zero. Not one witness ever. Leland Kaiser said she did not have any confidence in her friend's story. Her friend. Friends pressured, friends of Christine Blasey Ford pressured Kaiser to change her story. And all alleged witnesses, all of them, strongly denied the claim. Ford's father supported Kavanaugh's confirmation. Ford didn't know the location of the assault. Ford doesn't know how she arrived. Ford doesn't know how she got home. Ford doesn't know the date or even what time of the week. Ford somehow remembers she had precisely one beer, but not any other details. Kavanaugh's calendars all support his claim from that time. Ford changed the date of the incident by years from her initial stories. Character witnesses from the time all support Kavanaugh. Ford's first mention of Kavanaugh's name, 2012, after he became a national figure. False claims were made about Ford's inability to fly. Ford scrubbed her social media. Ford said she wanted to stay confidential, but the first call was to the Washington Post. Mm-hmm. Ford's attorney admitted a motive of desiring an asterisk by Kavanaugh's name. Ford has benefited politically, financially, and socially in liberal circles, and nothing in Kavanaugh's past remotely is similar to the claim for the past 37 years. And she is viewed as credible? What made her credible?
Based on what?
What evidence made her credible? Zero.
Is there one piece of evidence? Can you name me a good one?
There wasn't one.
Because there isn't one.
There isn't one. It's like, wow. Tell us who the good one was.
Exactly. Hey, can you name a good one? Well, Flake. I like how she just lobbed Flake out there. Well, Flake. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
See, what I think is going on is transgender women watch The View and say, come on, we can be better women than they are.
Yeah, probably. It's
come
just
on. Look at this stereotype. These women have no critical thinking skills.
How do you get a book deal? How do you get a book deal based on this? I guess anybody can have a book deal.
Yeah.
Stay in the news long enough, you get a book deal. Because the editors are ignoring The publisher is ignoring the facts of this case.
Oh, yeah, completely. There wasn't one fact, not one piece of evidence, one witness that could verify anything that she ever said.
Right.
None. There wasn't one piece of evidence, There wasn't a piece of evidence that said they even ever met.
Right.
They remember the witnesses who were at the party? They go, he wasn't even there.
Right.
Remember the party? What's she talking about?
I mean, it went absolutely nowhere. But I guess if you just stay in the news long enough, I just have to know from the publisher's standpoint, who do you think it is that's going to buy this book and think, aha, look at all of this stuff? Because it is basically the entire story. The only reason you would buy it is if you believe her story. And a story is based on nothing. No evidence whatsoever.
Well, it's been an interesting week, hasn't it? Already.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just a Wednesday.
Yeah. Can you name a good one?
It's going to be, if you think it's amplified now, it's going to be more amplified as we hit summer and early fall.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a zoo.
Right. I don't know what the convention for the Democrats looks like. It's complete chaos, though. How do you not have in every prime time speaking spot? And remember, it ends essentially Thursday night with Biden on stage. But every primetime spot, it's going to be radical agenda, radical agenda, radical agenda. How is it not? You can't pull back now.
Yeah, what issue can you pull back on?
You can't pull back on anything.
Can't pull back. I mean, the president's trying to ride this, him and Schumer trying to ride this tightrope. They're not succeeding at walking. Excuse me, I said riding.
Yeah.
Neither could ride on a tightrope.
Right.
Neither could walk on one, but
right.
They're trying to walk this tightrope of okay, we can please the Hamas supporters and the Israeli supporters at the same time.
You cannot.
Just the fact that they're attempting to accomplish that feat in itself, while it might be quite daring, they're not going to succeed at it.
Yeah, there's no way to get there.
Imagine sitting in a meeting. Look, our goal is to be both pro-Hamas and pro-Israel at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal is to put out the message to all the Hamas supporters that we support genocide and at the same time support Israel.
Right.
Yeah, let's go with that one.
Right.
Yeah, I like that idea. We'll go with that one. Hey, Mo, what do you think?
I mean, seriously, if 9/11 were to happen today, would they call them mostly peaceful air travelers, the 19 hijackers? I have to ask that question because that's how bizarre
it is, yeah,
and radical it has become.
It's so crazy.
And it's you can't reverse it. You can't, the Democratic Party can't put their foot down, because if they do, they're going to step in a huge, heaping, steaming pile of garbage that won't go away.
I want to play this quick cut yesterday. I saw that our friend Chris Crock, who fills in a lot of times when we're gone here, posted this yesterday. It's just funny, but it also relates to something else here that we'll talk about in a little bit. This is Representative Ted Lieu here. Are you ready?
Okay.
Here we go.
All right.
The best way to oppose fake news is for people to watch outlets like MSNBC, where you report real news all the time.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. Well, you saw that, that Lieu went after Trump.
Yeah.
Saying that, he doesn't have wealth. And Mark Cuban, actually, and he's no Trump fan at all.
Right.
Said, what are you talking about? Nobody has liquid cash like that.
Right. There's a
how
difference between net worth and cash on hand.
Now, he also made clear he was not a fan of Trump.
Right.
But and the other thing he did do that I do agree with, he did go after, said, forget about the bloodbath stuff. What about the actual tariffs? And did walk through tariffs yesterday, which most of what he said was pretty on spot. And we've been very critical of Mark Cuban, especially since the summer of 2020, for his enabling of the lie that police departments are systemically racist to hunt down and kill blacks, which was what Black Lives Matter believed and what he did not object to in the NBA at all.
Right.
So when we agree with somebody, we'll tell you we agree with them and why, and when we disagree with them, we'll do the same. But yeah, on the tariff thing, it's like went through it point by point by point, made some good points on it.
Yeah, and Ted Lieu clearly, this is what they want you to believe. This is what the left wants you to believe, because there are plenty of people that are saying, "Well, he's got the money, he just doesn't want to pay it." And the fact is that then you don't know the difference between net worth and cash on hand. And there is a big difference.
Well, ignorance is bliss. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up later on today, it will be Hunter Biden's business partners testifying, two of them before Congress. You saw that Devin Archer isn't going to be there.
Yeah.
That was weird, though, because they said, well, we didn't get the invitation in time. He needs time to prepare. By the way, you do need time to prepare when you do these things.
Oh, man.
Number one, when you appear before Congress.
Yeah.
Whatever. Was Michael... was it Caputo that was stating that when he had to appear before Trump, and he had major financial problems. He goes, it's $50,000 every time you got to appear before Congress.
Yeah,
that's what the legal fees are.
That's what you got to pay.
But Bob Ulinsky and then another business partner is going to be there before Congress. That's going to be interesting, especially Bob Ulinsky when Democrats go after him.
Yeah, I can't wait.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here. So I'm reading here straight from the press release from the House Oversight Committee.
Yeah.
This morning at 10 a.m., the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability will hold a hearing titled Influence Peddling, Examining Joe Biden's Abuse of Public Office. You notice whose name doesn't appear there? Hunter. Oh. Because the goal is Joe. Following the impeachment inquiry's interview and deposition phase, this hearing will examine evidence confirming Joe Biden lied to the American people about his family's business dealings and, in fact, attended meetings, spoke on speakerphone, dined and had coffee with his son's foreign business associates who were collectively funneling the Biden's millions of dollars. The hearing will also examine discrepancies between Hunter Biden's testimony and the testimonies of his business associates. Takes place today. Invited witnesses, Mr. Robert Hunter Biden, of course, who's not going to be there. Mr. Devin Archer, who also is not going to be there. His lawyer said they never got the invitation. They never got it until recently, and he doesn't have enough time to prepare.
Right.
And there was never a response. I didn't see a response from Comer on that one.
No, that's an interesting point. I didn't see a response either. And because you would think, all right, that sounds like a big procedural issue. If you're expecting him, because they know how it works. Comer knows how it works. Assuming he was aware that they didn't receive the invitation. I mean, it's I guess hard to know. I didn't hear the lawyer say we believe it got lost in the mail, one of those kind of claims. So if they didn't get it in time, you can't possibly make that without proper time for preparation.
Right. So, and nobody seemed to debate that one. That one, now there's a ton of different other news items that have come out since that, but also Tony Bobulinski will be there, and also Jason Galinas, all those two, Bobulinski and Galinas, former business partners with Hunter Biden. I'm really interested to see Bobulinski, because Bobulinski has been take no prisoners all along.
Yep.
Anybody comes after him on the Democrat side, his lawyers blister off a letter to him.
Yeah.
You're full of it.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be interesting, because they're not, as well as I do, they're going to take that 5 minutes and not want to go back and forth with him.
Right.
They're just going to blast him and not allow him to speak.
Exactly.
I have a feeling you're going to have Republicans. If I were the Republicans, I would say, look, we're going to ask Bobulinski all the questions that are important, but we're going to have enough time to sit there. And so we need to find out who here is going to say, look, you have my time to respond to this person over here, this Democrat over here, or you can respond here. They wouldn't let you speak. They made accusations. Go at them.
Right.
Because he will.
Oh, yeah.
And we were wondering, because we remember him in October of 2020, and we went, when he reappears again, will he be as adamant? I mean, you can't even make the case that he's the same. He's more intense and passionate, and over again says, I'm telling the truth. They're not. I'll go anywhere and debate anyone, anytime about this. And you don't hear really much from the Democrats. You're going to hear it today, though. You're going to hear it today. They're going to change the topic. They're going to make it about Trump. They're going to do whatever.
Yeah, diversion tactics.
But it'll be interesting to see how they try to destroy Bobulinski or Galinas. Now, with Devin Archer not showing, one wonders, because the thought went through my head, does he just not want to go through it in public? That, look, I've given the deposition, that's enough. The deposition is me under oath, and it's the lawyers really. That's really the part that counts. Now, with Hunter Biden, fine. If he doesn't want to show, he doesn't want to show. See, he said he wanted a public hearing. We gave it to him. He's a coward. Why? Because he was bluffing.
Why the 180?
Right.
Because he was bluffing.
Now, will they subpoena him at some other time to testify alone?
Well, that's a good point, because I thought to myself, it would be better to have it isolated, to make it basically Hunter Day on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
We're decorating the halls and everything. But you do that because then you make that the story.
All right. And so the House Judiciary Committee from the GOP put out, and they have it here, never before seen footage. And it says they were selling the brand, and the brand was Joe Biden. Now they have Devin Archer, Galinas, and Bobulinski all here are the ones that are actually doing the talking. I wish they wouldn't have put the dang music behind it. If you're gonna, just let it roll. But they put music behind it, dramatic kind of music, which I don't think you need.
Yeah, it's dramatic enough.
In this setting, right. But here's I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's quite long, but I want to play part of it here just to give you an idea of what the Republicans are setting up.
Our goal, that is Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, and myself, was to make billions, not millions.
The prize is that contact and that access to power.
The relationship development is business. Joe Biden walking in a room and shaking Chairman Yee's hand is business.
The entire value add of Hunter Biden to our business was his family name and his access to his father, Vice President Joe Biden. Because of this access, I agreed to contribute equity ownership to them, Hunter and Devin, for no out-of-pocket cost to them in exchange for their, quote, relationship cap.
I want to be crystal clear. From my direct personal experience and what I've subsequently come to learn, it is clear to me that Joe Biden was the brand being sold by the Biden family.
What was the value that Hunter Biden brought to the table, according to Mr. Archer?
Well, it was the term he used at the time was the Biden lift. The Biden lift that we talked about was access. Access meant, to us at the time, being in the business of acquiring other businesses, to persuade third parties to do business with us.
You just spell it out for us, what the Biden lift did to induce companies to want to be able to do these transactions. What was it? What was the Biden lift?
I think it was situation specific. Foreign investors would have a view of political access to the most powerful, admired country in the world, leadership in the most powerful, admired country in the world.
But, was business partners with, the Bidens for years, comes out and tells the world that Joe Biden was on 20-plus phone calls? What was he calling for? Why? He was calling to demonstrate the Biden brand to whoever was in that meeting, whether it was the Ukrainians, the Romanians, the Russians, Colombians, Chinese, whoever it was. That's all he had to do. He didn't have to say, well, hey, what about that deal? Where are we getting the money to fund that? Just him being on the phone is evidence of involvement and enabling the transaction. And any statement otherwise is an absurd statement.
This call took place on May 4, 2014, during a gathering hosted by a Ukrainian associate of Ms. Baturina and a business partner of ours at Romanoff's, a restaurant in Brooklyn, New York. A few days after this May 4th party, an email my lawyer provided to this committee shows that Devin had confirmed Ms. Baturina was committed to a, quote, hard order of $10 to $20 million in a Burnham investment banking client. During the May 4th party, we were told to go to an area of the restaurant to gather because Hunter was going to call his father. Hunter called his father, said hello, and hold on, Pops. Then put on the call on speakerphone and said, I'm here with our friends. I told you we're coming to town, and we wanted to say hello. The vice president said hello and some pleasantries, and hope you had safe travels, and then it seemed like he wanted to bring the call to an end by saying, okay, you be good to my boy. Hunter responded by saying, everything is good, and we're moving ahead. The vice president said something about being helpful, and Hunter ended the call by saying that he was going to call his father later. I recall being stunned by this call to actually hear the vice president's voice on the phone. It was clear to me that this was a prearranged call with his father, meant to impress the Russian investors that Hunter had access to his father and all the power and prestige of that position.
And then they were all working. I wasn't interacting with Joe after that, for that week. They were all working to get Joe Biden to come to New York in May of 2017 and meet with Chairman Yee. Little did I know at that time that Joe had already met Chairman Yee, and that's why they were so casually talking about it.
In 2014, I agreed with Hunter and Devin that the Burnham & Company enterprise would be significantly enhanced by forming a partnership with Harvest Fund Management, a $300 billion Chinese financial services company closely connected to the Chinese Communist Party. Harvest had already agreed to be a founding partner of a newly established fund called BHR.
So there you go, just some of it. And Glenn is, everything he's talking about in that video is when Biden was vice president.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And dealing with the Chinese, trying to get Chinese deals and all that done. So, again, I expect that there's going to be a pretty big media blackout on this. You're not going to be able to hide it because it's going to be all over the internet.
Right. Yeah.
But it's the continuation of the Republicans just going, see, because as we have stated, there's only two possibilities here. One possibility that's being brought up by Democrats and the other possibility by Republicans. And the possibility being brought up by Republicans is this was an influence peddling operation.
Right.
that that Jim Biden and Hunter Biden were selling access to their father.
Yeah.
That simple. And it enriched the entire family. And because they didn't believe it was above board, you had all of the secret bank accounts, you had all of the secret LLCs that were formed in order to distribute money to the entire Biden family. The Democrats' fallback position now, and this isn't, as you said, it's not a great, strong position for Democrats, but you heard it. It was the illusion of influence. So what was happening here, according to the Democrats, their now new fallback position, when they say that, they don't even realize what they're communicating. This is where they have no self-awareness whatsoever. What they're communicating is Jim and Hunter Biden lied to all of these foreign entities over a period of 10, 12, 14, 15 years, whatever the time span is. Don't have that laid out, exactly as to what that is.
Mm-hmm.
But for over a decade, well over a decade, that Jim and Hunter were pretending to sell access to the president. They were attempting to destroy the president's legacy by using him to sell fake access. They were lying to the Chinese. They were lying to the Romanians. They were lying to the Ukrainian business people that had close ties, all had close ties to the government and government intelligence agencies that wanted access to the vice president, that they lied about all of it and continued, never delivered to any client ever, yet still kept getting millions of dollars that then they distributed to the entire family, which meant the entire family knew that they were using Joe, and the entire family was attempting to destroy Joe Biden's legacy.
Somebody should call the office of Letitia James. We found fraud.
Did they do any business in New York?
So any of those bank accounts in banks that are based in New York?
But those are the two possibilities, and both aren't good, and one isn't believable.
Right, exactly.
The one isn't believable.
Right.
That Joe had no idea.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you're saying, if you're saying the illusion of influence.
Right. If it's the illusion of influence.
Illusion means not real.
And this is where the Republicans have not taken advantage of that. They never took advantage of that as we did. And so
I haven't heard that. I haven't heard anybody explain that.
Right.
To say, okay, what your defense, what you're claiming is
that the entire Biden family is corrupt and trying to and have attempted over the last 15 years to destroy the legacy of Joe Biden.
Imagine
to all enrich themselves, the entire family.
Right?
Is that the fallback position for Democrats? Is that officially what you're communicating?
If that's your defense,
if it's the illusion of influence, how can you take it any other way than how we've taken it?
Right. Break it down to what it means.
Yeah.
It means that there was no real influence. We were just getting money and pretending like it was influential.
And doing everything to destroy the legacy of Joe Biden because he's in this position now. And so
he had nothing to do with it, which means he wasn't aware of it.
Right.
Man.
But now he's aware of it and still not upset.
Right.
At his entire family for attempting to destroy his legacy. The entire Biden family is against Joe Biden. That's the Democrats' fallback position on this.
And you're funding bank accounts with it fraudulently. Because it's the illusion of influence. You didn't actually you sold something that wasn't real and had that money put inside a bank. How's that not bank fraud?
Under the Democrats' new definition of fraud, yeah.
Well, I mean, if you got that money, if that's ill-gotten money, if you're saying illusion of influence, it means it's not real influence. You sold it under the guise of it being influential, and you took the money.
That's what I meant.
Fraud.
under the Democrats' definition of fraud, that's fraud.
I would say that's fraud. Yes, exactly. You got
well,
the
it would
money.
be tough to say a political promise to get funding.
I don't know. Is it these days?
Well, that's why I said the Democrat definition.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I'm agreeing.
Exactly. Okay.
And which means then you took that money and put it into a bank. That's money you got fraudulently, and you deposited that money into not just one bank account.
And then Hunter didn't pay taxes on what he got.
Man.
866-98-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. In order to manage speed, you need to understand the 4 factors involved in stopping a vehicle. Perception distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time you see a hazard until your brain recognizes it. The perception time for an alert driver is approximately 3/4 of a second. Reaction distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time your brain tells your foot to move from the accelerator until your foot hits the brake pedal. The average driver has a reaction time of 3/4 of a second. Brake lag distance also needs to be taken into account. When operating a vehicle with air brakes, it takes about half a second for the mechanical operation to take place. Finally, braking distance is the distance it takes a vehicle to stop once the brakes are applied. Braking distance is affected by the weight, length, and speed of the vehicle, as well as road condition. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, we've always wondered, because the day that we heard the illusion of influence, well, it's only the illusion of influence. We said, well, let's break that down. And no Republican has really broke that down to say, understand, that Joe Biden first knew nothing, and now what the Biden position is that the entire family was ripping off Joe. Do that in order to bring them out and say, is that what happened?
Right.
So if it's an illusion of influence, were you guys really using your father and your brother? Were you really destroying the legacy of Joe Biden? Is this all because you were lying to these foreign governments and foreign entities representing governments, and you were ripping them off, saying that Joe was going to commit a bribe for you or do influence peddling for you, and Joe knew nothing about it, and you enriched your entire family with millions of dollars? You would think that some liberals would be upset at the Biden family for doing that.
You'd think.
And this is where Republicans, again, this is where they miss the boat every time. Not every time, but they miss the boat a lot. And
it's a huge opportunity that's right there in front of you.
Yep. And we've been saying it since the day they said illusion of influence.
Autonomous individuals in unison. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, and so the reason that we bring it up, now you don't hear a lot of talk anymore. You may hear today, it would be interesting to see if they bring up, no, there was no influence, there was no influence peddling. It was the illusion of influence, because the Republicans then should pound what we have just stated.
Right.
So what they're saying, if they're saying there was an illusion of influence, is because that's the only thing it can be, is Hunter and Jim Biden were selling fake access to the president. They were telling other countries that, you pay us and we'll get our father to do something for you.
Right.
Now, their claim is they never delivered anything to these entities, who were just fools and handed over tens of millions of dollars. And then Jim and Joe took that money, funneled through these banks.
Jim and Hunter.
What did I say?
Jim and Joe.
Jim and Hunter funneled this money through the bank accounts and through all these LLCs that went to the Biden family, which means if I got a check from my sister, I'm going to question where it came from. If I get a check from my brother out of the blue.
If I'm getting a check for $250,000 from anybody.
I'm getting a check for $10.
And I'm not sitting at a title company closing on a real estate deal.
Yeah, exactly. if I get any money. And so they were all in on it. So the entire Biden family was screwing over poor Joe and attempting to destroy his life and legacy and his chance to be president of the United States.
Right.
And you know why you do that? You do that because, number one, they set the table. Yeah. And so your whole goal, once they set the table and you think, well, what are they saying? Can we explain this to the public? Yeah, we can. And we can make the entire Biden family look so evil to rip off Joe, because that's the option they're bringing up. This is the option they're bringing up, is they tried to screw over their father. They tried to screw over Joe. Mm-hmm. That's their fallback position because you want to make them answer. You want to make Joe speak. You want to make Hunter speak. You want to make the White House speak. Because if they come out and go, well, that's completely absurd. What's absurd? He brought it up. What's the other scenario?
Right.
Your whole point is to get people talking about it. And we thought the Republicans just blew a huge opportunity, and Comer blew a huge opportunity to take that and go with it. Now, if it happens again today, well, this is about the 15th time we've told you, use it. Because you can still use it. If after all the testimony they come out today, well, they didn't prove there was any influence peddling. What they proved was there an illusion of influence. So, if, I don't know, if Jeffries comes out and says it was an illusion of influence, then you simply say the Democrat House leader has said that the whole Biden family was attempting to rip Joe off. That's their fallback position. And you make them, if they're going to come out, if they don't think, if they have no self-awareness, politically, I want to make sure, politically, you make it a bloodbath for them. You make it a political bloodbath.
Yeah, because, and the fact that they've even brought it up at all tells you they have nowhere to go on this.
Nowhere to go. Nothing.
They have nothing.
No. And so you keep pushing them into a corner. But that's what politics is about. And by the way, I'm talking as if I was a political consultant to the Republicans.
Right.
Just like at times we've said if I was a political consultant for the Democrats. What we're talking about here, politics, what you do with it, how you go to the next step.
Right.
Because we know it was political influence.
Yeah.
We know what the truth is.
Right.
But you simply, just like in any court, and any court cross-examination, can you believe they said that? Wow, they didn't even think about what they said. All right, tear them to shreds. Not literally, figuratively. I don't want to get a tear them to shreds bloodbath controversy here.
Right. Heaven forbid.
It's if one more person writes me and go, hey, I loved Bloodbath Monday this week.
Well, you just wait.
Bloodbath Monday was a great show, guys.
Yeah. We have more in store. With Bob Ulinsky, there's every reason for him to be anxious to tell the story over and over. Look at how many years this has been going on.
Yeah, because
he's been waiting for this since debate season of 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, he told his story to the media, but he's been waiting to tell it officially to the American people since then.
And so that's where you look at Bob Ulinsky, because he's the most well-known one, because he's the one that actually got the TV time.
Right.
On Fox.
Right.
At that point. He's the one that was he was sitting at one of the debates, right? They brought him to one of the debates.
Yep.
And again, the media just didn't pay much attention to him at all, the mainstream media. But he was out there. And so you look at the perception. Again, I'm looking at this as a political consultant. You're a political consultant to the Republicans, and you say, okay, he was there, but the argument from Democrats is he was simply trying to take, political advantage, at this point, and now the election's over, Biden won. Who cares about Bob Ulinsky? You bury it, right? And so, just like the Christine Blasey Ford coming back, she's going to have no impact because she was on The View to promote her memoir because there's no evidence.
Right.
Well, Bob Ulinsky has sat there for about 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at the perception, was he just a political operative or somebody who wanted to destroy Biden or destroy Hunter because he got screwed in a business deal, right?
Right.
And so
3.5 you look at what possible motive he might have.
So 3.5 years go by, and he comes out stronger than ever. And when the Democrats attack him, that letter was brutal that he sent a couple of weeks ago to the Democrats, just going, you're going to go here? Fine, let's go here.
Right.
I mean, no backing off at all. And you realize this guy's been sitting there for the last 3.5 years, chomping at the bit to, in his own words, to tell the truth as to what happened. So here's the interesting thing is, how far have they investigated his life where they feel that they can get something that's embarrassing, something that Bob Ulinsky, from what I've seen so far, I bet you is prepared for it. All indications, just from seeing how he has operated on, every single level or every single, time span that's gone by. Once he's back in the news, you're like, okay, that's strong again. All right, that's strong.
Well,
again.
the go-to play is to scandalize, is to, basically tear the guy down. You do that, politically with the Democratic Party, or you do it through the media, or both, liberal media, and you really haven't seen that in a big way.
No, he hasn't been touched yet.
And that should be a tell. Maybe it will happen. Maybe they'll go after him. But if they could break him down, wouldn't that already have happened? Wouldn't that have happened in the 2020 debate season when he first appeared? If you're because he comes back now,
the only thing is they were just shutting everything down and not covering it.
Mm-hmm. That's my point.
Yeah, that was
if there was something there, they'd cover it and say, this guy's nothing, this guy's a liar. We've talked to people who know him, blah, blah, blah.
No, but my point is they weren't even doing that. They were just ignoring the story didn't exist.
That's my point. But
you're saying if the story didn't exist, that they're talking about the story.
No, I'm saying that when he was there during the debate season, it did exist. They were ignoring it.
Right.
Yeah. And if he weren't a threat, then they would have come at him. Oh, this guy's a liar.
I see
they
what you mean.
would have broken him
Okay,
down
I understand
left and right.
Okay.
It would have been done before Election Day of 2020.
Right. They never knew where to go with Bob Ulinsky. I don't think they know where to go now.
I don't think they've had 3.5 years. Why haven't we seen that? Why haven't we seen him scandalized the way you would normally do that?
Well, what you would do is you would attempt to scandalize him so it was well known in the public before you got to today.
Exactly.
You'd have stories. This guy Bobulinski said this. This guy Bobulinski said
my
this.
question.
This guy who
Why
made it.
haven't we seen that by now?
Especially in the last year, knowing where Comer was going.
And he's been chomping at the bit. Bobulinski's been chomping at the bit to tell his story officially to the American people. And it's taken this long. That's why he's anxious, because it's taken this long. You know, if you're trying to tell the truth, and he knew from day one, you know, this isn't some far right winger. He made that clear. And you haven't seen the breakdown of him to discredit him in a big way before now. Why not?
You're right, because in the last 6 months, knowing that this day was coming before Election Day, you would have attempted to set the table, and the stories would have appeared. Bobulinski has 5 love children.
Yeah.
You know,
all of the people who know him say he's a liar, and he makes things up, and he's been caught in lies, and he did this, or he, you know, whatever. He was caught stealing. He was, you know, I mean, you would think there would be something, some kind of attempt.
And there was nothing like, oh, Bobulinski was seen with Donald Trump Jr. Bobulinski was seen at this Republican event. Bobulinski is friends with Kavanaugh.
Yeah,
I had to throw that one out.
Right.
Kavanaugh. We think we have a. Well, look at this lens here. We're looking. Is that Bobulinski on that yacht with Clarence Thomas?
Exactly.
It's like you would have had something that would have come up on him, knowing, especially over the last 6 months, Democrats knowing that this day was coming.
Right. And if you've got nothing, what you do is ignore it.
But he seems smart enough to keep himself completely and totally politically independent and stick to the facts on this.
Right.
So far.
Right.
It's going to be interesting. I'll be watching today. I got a ton of stuff to do. I'll get in and out of the house, but I'll be watching all the analysis on it, which can drive me crazy because all of a sudden you realize I've missed 20 minutes of it and I don't get the one line that somebody who's watching says, "Oh, Bobulinski, can't believe he said that." Said what?
Yeah, right.
I mean, I know that's going to happen to me today as I'm out and about doing stuff, but I'm going to try to watch as much as I can of it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. And you know, look,
and
I would say good for him. He finally gets his day to tell the American people his story. But you know, it's none of this is good. This is not for him. This is not opportunity. He's clearly just somebody who is looking to tell the truth and to tell his story. And he's not afraid of anyone in this equation in how this is going to play out.
And the other thing, too, Galina's testifying, too, is going to talk, and this is something that you haven't heard a lot, everything he's talking about, so much of what the Republicans had in that little, promotional video, everything was when he was vice president.
Right.
That's a bad one for Democrats.
Yep.
866-90-RED-I.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Now, talk about betting. What's the over-under that any Democrat will actually debate Bobulinski?
The only thing you can do is just sit there and shut him out, and then just go on and you're nothing but a blah, 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 and never give him a chance to speak. You can't let him in.
I wonder if anyone will actually ask him a question. Well, I mean,
you may ask him, but you won't let him answer.
Is it true you beat your mother?
Right.
Yes or no answer, please.
Right.
Will they ask him? Let me rephrase that. Will they ask him a question of substance concerning the topic at hand?
Right. Exactly.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.